Kong for the last generation.
On
You have a choice.
BakerMotel.com, the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
I
that
realize
woman.
that this is something
Miss
he
Lewinsky.
isn't
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
You're tuned in to Backfire this morning. We're still waiting for some people to get here, but Steve is here reading his newspaper. Good morning, Franklin.
People? What people?
John Stanberry and Andy Finkelstaller, I understand, is going to be a special guest this morning. Steve is still doing his morning vocal warm-ups, if you hear him in the background. La, 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 la. And I believe he's about ready.
Oh, let's see. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Backfire.
Good morning.
Here he comes now, John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey, and of course myself, Steve Billball Hickson, and our chief engineer, Daniel Brantley. And now we can officially start. John is here.
My gosh,
we're going to do this today.
I think I saw John run there.
I did run.
I've never seen that before.
I was still late, but I ran.
Oh, we have a standing joke here in the studio. John likes to get here like 1 minute after the show should start. He's one of these people that does not waste a minute. So he's very organized in the fact that he will be here 1 minute late, not 1 minute early. That's true. That's utilizing your time, right?
Or planning to do too much, trying to do too much.
All right, now he's got his chair. He's comfortable. He's ready to go. Oh golly, I tell you, where to
Just
start?
another boring week around here.
Yeah.
Where to start? Let's start with the sheriff and Dan Rawls. What in the world is going on when you got a sheriff and a county commissioner carrying on like this? Dan Rawls, and I will say this, I didn't realize, I mean, I know Dan likes to hear himself talk, but it seems like there's been a lot going on with the sheriff and Dan Rawls that just, it doesn't seem to end. What's going on? Anybody got any comments about any of this?
Well, I sort of get the impression they don't really like each other.
Wonder what caused that.
I know. You're looking at two guys who are somewhat speechless on this, but...
Well, I mean, I don't think it's productive. I think now it'd be better to focus. You know, when I listen to Dan talk about the gas tax, he actually speaks incredibly knowledgeably about that, makes a really good case. How some of this money, for example, $2 million in Bradley County, leaving Bradley County to build a monorail in Davidson County in Nashville. You know, that money could be better spent here. So I think maybe if we could both focus on the jobs at hand, it in the long run might be better.
In other words, if they start griping at each other and go to work?
Well, I mean, I think they're
job?
both working. I think they're both working hard. I just think maybe we need to take a pause for a little bit about this.
Well, I don't think it can happen that way. Egos are in the way here or something. I don't know. Anyway, I don't think it's good for Bradley County for this for a county commissioner and a sheriff to be carrying on this way. So I wish they could work out their differences and move on. Is Dan planning on running for sheriff or something?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right, I'll let that in there. We'll move on.
I think we're all better served to just let whatever investigations are happening play out and let the conclusions be reached by people who are making those investigations rather than all of us just speculating about things.
Okay. Well, maybe we ought to invite them to come on Whoop and let them talk it out.
I'm not sure that's a good idea. I'm not sure about that.
Let's rephrase that. Backfire.
Backfire. Well, no, Whoop's fine. If you want to have them some other time.
Oh, my goodness, my goodness. Planned Parenthood. if you closed it on a day without women, there would be 887 babies that wouldn't be aborted.
That's right. That's per day. About 880 babies a day are aborted.
There'd be about 6,000 mammograms that weren't performed.
That's not
also.
true. That is absolutely, completely
No,
not
it's
true.
actually false.
Their
John.
president was on the news last week and admitted they don't perform a single mammogram.
They procure
Not one.
them for people.
No, they don't, Franklin. They send them to other places.
Yes,
women
and they pay for them,
that
John.
they could go to in the first
No, they
place.
couldn't.
No, they don't, Franklin. They don't provide
There
any
are
mammograms.
states in this country where Planned Parenthood is the primary health care source for women, particularly poorer women.
Yeah, that's because they're located 80% plus
Sorry,
percent
John,
in minority
you're wrong.
districts because of the racist founder, Margaret Sanger, wanting to weed out the black people from our race, from our
There's a
population.
reason, John,
Franklin,
that
was she a
67% of the
racist?
country...
Was Margaret Sanger
I don't
a
care if
racist?
she's a racist. She's dead.
She's the founder. She set the tone, and they still follow the tone. And the President of the United States,
they don't follow
Obama,
the
gave her a Presidential Medal of Freedom, even though she spoke 12 times to the Ku Klux Klan, even though she was a eugenicist
The
and a
facts
racist.
are, John, that this is a crusade on your party's part that does not reflect reality in any way.
Franklin, you're
That's
saying,
a fact.
you're saying that there's all these other services that are so important, that's why we can't defund them, correct?
First of all, you don't fund them.
We do fund
No,
them.
you don't.
400
Planned Parenthood.
400,000. 400.
What they are is a medical provider like a hospital or a doctor who gets paid under insurance plans like Medicaid and Medicare.
Who is the
and so
leading
forth.
provider
They're
of
not
abortions
funding
in the
any
country.
money directly at all.
That's not true.
$400,000
If you can do that, then you can say they're
Franklin
not going to
is
fund
giving you a
Genova Hospital.
lawyerly response.
No, it's not.
Franklin, does
It's
the
actually
federal
true.
government send almost $500 million to Planned Parenthood? Yes or no?
No.
Do they send it to them, Franklin?
No, John. They're just like any other
Franklin,
doctor
you're not
or
answering
hospital.
the question. Do they get $500 million from the federal government? Yes
okay,
or no?
possibly.
So they fund them. So that's the lawyerly answer you just got out of him,
Will you
folks.
explain to me, John, the legal theory? You're always big into the Constitution, so you claim anyway.
Mm-hmm.
What's the legal theory in which the government's going to say, oh, well, we're just not going to fund Genova Hospital this year?
Well,
We're not going to fund John
I think it's
Stansberry
called
this year.
democracy, Franklin. I think if you have a
So you
majority in
think the
Congress...
federal government can pass
Yes.
a law that says we're not going to
Yes.
let Medicare
Actually,
pay
I do,
this
Franklin.
dentist?
Actually, I do.
That's crazy.
No, it's not crazy.
It
It's
is
called
crazy.
democracy.
It's not democracy.
It is
at all.
democracy,
Well, if it's
Franklin. If you don't
democracy,
like
then
it-
you should honor the 65% of Americans who think it ought to be funded.
Actually, that's not true
no,
either,
it is
Franklin.
true, John. You just don't
That's
want to
not
accept
true,
those
Franklin.
facts.
No, Franklin,
The
first
facts
off,
are that you're in a distinct
do you believe-
radical minority
do you bel-
that doesn't
Actually,
reflect
I'm not
in
in a
any way
minority.
the majority of
The
American
majority
people.
of people think abortion should be very limited, and they don't think the government should be paying for it. That's what they think, Franklin.
Why should we pay $400,000 in revenue?
400 million
$400 million. I'm sorry.
plus
To who?
Planned Parenthood
Planned Parenthood.
Why should they be treated any differently than any
because
other
they
provider?
perform abortions. And the
So do lots
majority-
of doctors.
and the
Are you
majority-
saying they can't
and
get
the-
any money
and
from
the
insurance companies?
majority of the well, Franklin, here's the
So are lots of hospitals. Are you saying
Do
they
you-
can't either?
You're saying that unfunding them would remove all of these other services, correct?
No. What I'm saying to you is there are places where that's the primary health care source available to people. And if you say they can't participate in it, you're
Actually,
taking away
President
that
Trump
primary
made a-
health care source
You're
for
right.
people.
So abortion, according to you and according to Planned Parenthood, is only 3% of the services they perform. So
Okay.
they perform all these other services that you are ranting and raving about people being denied, correct?
Okay.
All Trump said was, fine, we'll continue to fund you, just quit doing abortions. It's only 3%. It's only 3% of your services. Franklin.
you love
just,
that idea,
You just
don't you?
made the argument
You know
that
what?
all these other
John,
services were so vital.
you would
so
love-
why would they
you would
not
love,
drop
John,
a 3%
Your
service?
hypocritical
Why would they
Republican
not
Party
drop a 3%
would
service?
love, would just
Why
love
would they not
for
drop
the
a
federal
3%?
government to tell
Franklin,
doctors what services
Why would
they
they
can provide.
not drop a 3% service?
Why don't you answer the question?
What is it?
For years and years and decades, you've been screaming about the federal government mingling in people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
and overreaching and doing what they do. And now you're sitting here and you got the gall to say you think the federal government ought to tell doctors and hospitals what services they can provide to their patients.
Do they tell
What
them?
hypocrisy.
What about euthanasia, Franklin? Do they tell them that? By the
State
way,
governments do,
Harvard's
actually.
leading
State
medical
governments do
Harvard's
that, Tom.
leading medical bioethicist says that a baby's really not viable until he's 2 years old, and they should be allowed to be terminated
Well,
up to
that's
that
not
point.
the law now, is it,
Well,
John?
oh, you just making a case for
No,
us
I didn't.
deciding, aren't you?
No,
You
that's
just made the
regulation.
case you were
That's not
arguing
saying
against.
you can't
The
do it.
democracy that we live in can decide what we do
You're not
and don't
interested
allow.
in democracy?
I am, Franklin.
Because you're in a clear minority on this point.
Not when we vote to defund Planned Parenthood, we'll be in the majority, because that's
We'll
what'll
see.
happen. That's why
Okay.
y'all are so upset.
That would require you to pass the health care bill that's dead on arrival.
At ease. At ease, everybody. Now, we've got a longer show, and we got more subjects
What do
and
you
topics
mean,
than
at
just
ease?
one. At ease. Very calm. There we go.
There's that
ease.
nice man, Andy
Here
Fiegelstaller.
comes the referee I invited in here this morning, Mr. Andy Fickelstaller, to talk about some Obamacare issues.
Hooray.
Good morning, Andy.
Morning.
Welcome to Backfire.
A little cold out there today.
It's warm in here.
I know I was listening on the way in, getting fired up.
You couldn't wait to get here, could you?
I don't know anything about Planned Parenthood. so
Anyway,
can't talk
I
about
didn't
that.
really mean to start the show off that way, but anyway, we'll
Isn't that your job?
well, I don't know. I want to talk about Tennessee suing the federal government over the refugee settlement. What's going on with that lawsuit right now? Anybody know?
Well, Barack Obama, without notifying the states, without notifying the governors, over the objection of some governors in some states, placed these refugees in the states without anybody's knowledge. And that, according to the lawsuit, is a violation of the 10th Amendment, which gives the power to the states to decide these things.
Well, that's going to be a lovely example of the law of unintended consequences.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if that argument is true, then it means that the federal you have to decide, is the federal government responsible for immigration or are the states responsible for it?
Well, let's just
Well,
say
what do
that
you think,
nobody
No,
needs
no,
to be
if you're
responsible.
arguing that the states can decide that for themselves, then you would also have to concede that cities who don't want to enforce federal immigration laws are free to do that. Under
Well,
the
that's a
Constitution.
problem for
So
you,
make
Franklin,
that, no,
because
it's
it's
not
the
for me.
progressives that actually sued the state of Arizona when they tried to enforce federal immigration laws.
My point is, John, you can't have it both ways.
Well, could we just send them all to Hawaii?
Do what?
Let's just send all the refugees
But
to
I don't
Hawaii.
think the argument here is that they can't come to the state of Tennessee. The argument in the lawsuit is that the federal government had an obligation to allow the state of Tennessee to be aware of it and to participate in it.
Well,
It was actually a hidden secret program,
difference-
which the Obama administration was famous for.
so you're saying that the state has a right to just be told that there are immigrants in their state?
I don't know, Franklin. If
Is
I
that
had a
what
key,
you're saying?
If I had a key to your house, do I have a right to stick a renter in your spare bedroom without your knowledge?
Well, what if they were told?
Do you
Does the state
expect
the
to
right
have
do anything
autonomy
about
over
that?
your house?
Do the states have the right to do anything about that? That's the question.
They're suing and saying
That's
the
the
10th
question.
Amendment says that the state is an autonomous entity.
Well, I mean, is the federal government
that's
making
my
it an
point.
unfunded mandate for us to
It's
sue
not an
them?
unfunded mandate. They did it without us even
That's
knowing.
my point, though, John. If you take that
Well, it's
position,
definitely unfunded,
you
John.
have to say that these cities and states who say they want to be sanctuary areas have the right to do that. If that's your argument. I'm not taking a position on it. I'm just pointing out that that's the logical conclusion that one has to reach from the argument that's being advanced in that case.
Well, should they, if they want to be sanctuary cities, should they get federal money?
John seems to think that
He
if
is
the state has
conflating
some
two
right,
issues that have nothing
the same
to do with each
principles
other.
are involved.
No, they're not, Franklin. This is an idea of we weren't even notified. It was done without our knowledge. This isn't about states' rights per se. It's about honoring the Constitution and saying the federal government can't sneak
Well, the
into your
federal
state
government-
and slide people in that
The
you don't even
federal
know about.
government gives visas to people all the time. Are you saying that they're supposed to somehow send some email to the state that says,
problem
"Oh, we
here
let
is
these
they
people come in"?
circumvented the normal federal regulations for these people, brought them in without any of that process, and then hid them from the governors in the states they placed them in. If you're fine with that level of secrecy and saying, "Oh, I'm okay with Big Brother doing whatever they want in my backyard," then have at it, Franklin. But make sure you put your house on the list of homes they can stick them in.
Just make sure, John, that you make a consistent argument. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
You're not being consistent.
I seem to remember you arguing that Jan Brewer in Arizona shouldn't be trying to enforce federal law.
I didn't argue anything.
Yes, you did.
I just said that you can't have it both ways.
I guess you forgot about Jan Brewer and that whole argument we had about a year and a half ago.
Well, I do agree with that statement.
But
I'm not being inconsistent
that she
about
shouldn't
it.
enforce federal law?
I'm saying that it's not the state's responsibility to enforce federal law.
But she wanted to, and they sued her to stop her from doing it.
Well, it is
Your
a good
people
question.
sued her to stop her.
I don't think that Steve Crump can prosecute somebody for federal kidnapping. That's a federal charge. So maybe that distinction doesn't matter to you. It constitutionally does matter.
Well, I guess that distinction probably gets a little blurred by the family of the woman who was shot 14 times by the illegal alien that had been deported 5 times previous and who was actually let out on bail by the state of Washington, paid his own bail to let him out before he brutally murdered her.
Well,
She
if
might
he
see
shot,
that
that was a state law violation, John. That's
Actually,
different.
he was wanted by the feds, and
Whether
they
he
didn't turn
was
him
or
in.
not, if he was
If they
charged
had
with a crime,
cooperated,
you
he
just
would have
said
been
he
in
bailed
jail.
himself out on a
No,
state
the
charge.
state bailed him out because the ICE people were coming to get him. They actually bailed the guy out so ICE couldn't get him, and then he went on to brutally murder this woman. Congratulations, liberal progressive theology.
I have a simple question because it seems to be I can't ask anything that doesn't get you up. Are you for or against daylight savings time?
I'm against it.
John?
I could care less.
Well, Andy.
I like it being lighter longer. So
Lighter longer.
That daylight savings time, let's just keep it this way.
Yeah, why can't we just do
I don't
that?
understand how we even went to that. Was
Yeah,
that
but it gets lighter less the other half of the year, Andy.
well, I like it the way we just changed over. I was like, I like it being light at 7:30. Why can't we just keep it like this all year long?
I like the summertime daylight.
Leave it on one and keep it there then.
That's what I'm trying to say. Why do we change?
Well, this is the one we're on right now is the artificial one, though.
Where we spring.
I'm really surprised John isn't opposed to it, though, because it started in Europe.
What was the cause of the reason? So the farmers would have longer to
World War II, wasn't it?
No, actually, it was for energy costs.
energy costs?
Energy costs.
See, learn something new.
People
Ford
would
did.
burn lights less.
Yeah,
Started in World War
I
II.
missed a little trivia question on some TV show the other night because I got caught by the geography. Which country is entirely within one time zone? It was Russia, Spain, or China. Well, I picked Spain because Spain is smaller. It actually is China because they simply refused to honor the time zones. So they, even though they're in, I think, 4 or 5 time zones, they actually only have one.
Hey, Trump's on his way to Tennessee. Is that today?
15th.
Oh,
Is that today?
Yes.
Yep.
John, I'm surprised you're not going to be there.
There's a big bus going from Cleveland.
Oh, up
That's
to
what the
Nashville.
paper says.
To Nash Vegas.
Well, unfortunately, the Obama taxes are still in place, so I have
Hey,
to work to pay
let
my
me ask
taxes.
you something. You know, CSNBC, whatever it is, I mean, they're really, that Rachel Maddow, she is a nutcase from Nutsville. But last night, this tax return release, somebody stole Trump's tax return from 2005. Is that
Yep.
right?
Somebody
Which is a crime.
mailed a copy of it to
Well,
a
he
journalist
didn't
named
mail it.
Roger. We
Well,
don't know that.
They said it was put in a mailbox. It wasn't mailed because that'd be another federal crime.
Well, actually, it's a federal crime to put anything in the mailbox.
Well, so that journalist received it, and it's not a crime for
and you
him
know
to
what?
publish it.
It also shows that the New York Times published a completely incorrect story on him.
What's that?
Well, they said he didn't pay any taxes. He paid, what was it, $35 million? in taxes.
25%. That's a lot more than Obama paid.
Yep.
A lot of people. percentage-wise?
So the New York Times had run front page stories about how he took this $900 million tax loss.
The more
in
interesting
90.
question would be why the president didn't deny that statement when it was made then.
What? What statement?
The statement he's talking about, the New York Times.
No.
In fact, he doubled down on it and went, well, I'm a smart guy.
Franklin, he didn't deny that because that wasn't untrue. He did take a $900 million tax loss, but then they followed it up by saying that means that he probably paid no taxes for years.
Now, wait a minute.
This shows that they were completely wrong.
They were on
that doesn't show that at all.
NBC last night. They were trying to somehow pull this into Russia again.
Oh, I know.
Oh, sure.
What's Russia?
It's the country that met with Hillary Clinton's advisors during the campaign.
What is this Russia deal that they're infatuated? They hadn't found anything tying him into Russia.
Oh, they found lots of things at this point.
tying Trump into
Actually,
it?
Well,
they've not
tying
found
all of his
anything.
associates into it.
No, they found that they met with him just like they met with the Democrats. They've now admitted that they met with Hillary Clinton's people. Franklin, should we investigate
in
that?
2006, Donald Trump bought a property in Florida for $40 million.
In
Amazing-
2005.
Okay, I thought it was 6, but in any event, 18 months later, he turned around and sold that property to a Russian oligarch.
And
who-
that Russian knew Trump was going to be running for president, right?
I don't know what he knew at the time.
Okay.
That's not the point I was making, though.
Okay. All
All
right.
right, for $100 million. That individual is a large investor in something called the Bank of Cyprus, which Trump owed a gajillion dollars to, in which he was having some difficulty in those years paying those loans, interestingly enough. Presently, right now, I'll give you some other examples. The U.S. attorney that was fired in New York that's been kind of...
Wait a minute.
He was?
How many U.S. attorneys did Bill Clinton fire in 1992?
I'm not criticizing
Well, then quit
him
saying
for
fired.
Well, he was fired.
No, Franklin, he was turned over just like they do at every administration.
Right
Choosing
after
to
he'd
use-
been told they wanted him to stay.
Actually, they asked him to stay for a few months. He stayed a few months, and they asked him to
He
go.
also happened to be in the middle of an investigation of money
Every
laundering.
U.S. attorney in the country is in the middle of an investigation.
Of money laundering of Deutsche Bank.
He's
for
also
money
investigating the
laundering
Democrat
Russian
governor of
drug
New York,
funds, who
Cuomo.
also Trump owes a gajillion dollars to.
He owns drug funds?
Deutsche Bank.
In other words, he's a businessman who
His
borrows money.
campaign manager is under investigation
You
in
mean
4 countries.
Paul Manafort, who was his campaign manager for about 2.5 months
Till all these
before
Russian ties came
before
out.
Trump fired him?
Why 3.5 weeks did they know that Mike Flynn had these communications going on with Russia and denied them?
The argument there is why did
Before
he
they-
deny them? Because there was nothing
they
wrong with
did.
Mike Flynn having the conversations. That's what the Russian ambassador does,
well,
Franklin.
you're not-
That's what our U.S. ambassador in Russia
I guess it
does.
was okay for Mike Flynn to be getting top secret clearance advisories from the State Department and the Secret Service for 5 months while he was being paid by a foreign government. I guess you like
Well,
that
no,
idea
actually,
too.
Franklin, I don't like that. I'm glad Mike Flynn's gone, but the point is the meetings with the Russian ambassador were completely legal and normal. And the Democrats...
Everything's normal.
Why aren't you upset about Nancy Pelosi denying she ever met the man until a photo came out of her meeting the man? Why aren't you upset about Senator Claire McCaskill saying she never met the man
Because
until
none of,
photos
because
of the meeting
none of
came
those
out?
people have been
But they
bending
lied,
over
Franklin. What was
because
their
none
reason
of
for
those
lying?
people have been
But
bending
why were
over
they lying?
backwards telling
Why
us
were
how
they lying?
wonderful Vladimir
But why
Putin
were they
is.
lying? Why did they lie about it?
Because they're inept.
They're
politics.
U.S.
Franklin.
No, those are important, powerful people.
Did Russia Russia cost Hillary the election?
I don't know.
No, they had nothing to do with her being a complete moron who ran a horrible campaign.
Although one could certainly make the reasonable conclusion that they had a strong preference in the election, given that they were only leaking information from one side.
Actually, most people think...
And if you think the Republicans were just IT geniuses who couldn't be hacked, you need to get your head out of
All right, I want
the sand.
to change the subject again. We got to keep going here. We got to just keep moving.
Let's talk to Andy.
I've got a special guest in the studio this morning, Andy Picklestaller. He's an insurance expert. And I'd like to ask you, Franklin, if you think that Obamacare is going to kill 83%.
Do what?
Obamacare. Aren't they saying that Obamacare going to kill Republicans right now?
No,
I was
it's
going
gonna
to kill
kill
everybody. Kill everybody. Okay.
Excuse me?
83% of the too high premiums will make you die quickly. I don't know.
Higher
There's so
premiums?
much crap going on from the Democrats, I can't keep up with it anymore. Let's talk about Obamacare.
Yeah. Well,
No Obamacare. Let's talk about no Obamacare.
Well, it's still the law of the land until Congress changes it. So, even though the president has sent his executive order, I mean, that's what it's just a suggestion. But I mean, the taxes are still in place and everything's still in place until the law changes.
Well, let me
People
ask you this: is Obamacare in a death spiral, and it's not going to get any better unless it's changed?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's going to get any better. It's just how much you want to pay.
Is it going to collapse, though, Andy?
Well, it's backed by the federal government.
Let's let's say we don't do anything to it. How many more providers are going to pull out of the market?
Well, I mean, I mean, in our area, Bradley, Hamilton County, but for instance, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Tennessee is the largest carrier in the state of Tennessee. They only write in the more rural markets, which would Chattanooga, which is their home office, and then in West Tennessee, they don't write in Memphis, they don't write in Nashville, they don't write in Knoxville.
So what do the people in Memphis or Nashville have to choose from?
Well, they have Aetna or Cigna or Humana. The Blue Cross strategically pulled out of those markets because there was other carriers willing to take on that risk. So Blue Cross was trying to lessen their risk because they want somebody else to take that risk. But I see more and more carriers pulling out of the Obamacare individual mandate. I mean, rates went up 70 to 90% on the individual market.
No,
That's what
I thought they were going to go
Went up
down
83%.
$2,500 per person. You're saying they
Yeah, I
went
don't know
up
where that figure came
70
from.
to 90% came from President Obama.
Yeah, on individual individual plans, depending on what age bracket you fell under, it was 70 to 90% increase.
Gee, that's kind of a big increase, isn't it?
Well, it's significant,
Especially
Had
when
you
it
ever
was
seen
supposed-
that before Obamacare?
Well, yeah, we're talking about two different markets, individual versus
Have you ever
small
seen
group.
70 to 90% increases per year?
Not really that high, but I've seen 35 to 40.
But didn't Obamacare, wasn't it supposed to make the rates actually go down?
Well, that's what was said, but
So not only did they not go down, but it actually saw. Well, I'm just. I'm asking questions, Frank.
Something's got to change, But the problem is, there's not one answer. People want one answer to fix everything, but there's 5 or 6, 7 different moving parts that's going to have to happen. And if you don't have all of those, nothing's going to. We're just spinning around in a circle. The cost of procedures, pharmaceutical costs are outrageous. Our lifestyle choices lead to 60% or 70% of all claims are lifestyle driven. Obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure. So we've got to live healthier.
Why would someone live healthier when it doesn't cost them anymore not to?
Well, typically when it hits their pocketbook or their wallet.
But the point of Obamacare was to spread all that out on the taxpayer so it doesn't cost them. That's one of the problems. There's no incentive to do better because it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah, there's got to be a piece in place, and I'll give myself as an example. I know I need to eat better. I know I need to exercise. I know I need to lose weight. And I know all those things. I don't have to go to the doctor to tell me that, but I continue my lifestyle. I'm on a 10 milligram lisinopril and an allopurinol. It costs me like $8 a month. If that cost me $500 a month, I'd be maybe more motivated. I'd be motivated because I want to live longer and healthier. But from a cost standpoint, it's costing me less than $10 a month. So I'm not as motivated from a financial standpoint. But if it costs me $500 a month, I'd take a serious look. I need to do something. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's just how I think we think as people.
I think the biggest problem we've got is we've got inflated prices to cover the hospitals to cover themselves. In other words, you go into a hospital, there's no prices. You don't know what it's going to cost.
Well, I mean, that's the one thing that the healthcare law did not do, in my opinion. One of those pieces is we as consumers have to be smarter consumers, and in order to be smarter, we need to know what stuff costs.
But but again, if someone else is paying the bill for you, you don't care what something else costs.
No,
that's the inherent problem.
No, that's correct. I mean, if it's like if I'm going to a business and they're going to pay 100% of a catastrophic plan and 100% of a Cadillac plan, how many people are going to take the catastrophic plan? Well, nobody. Everybody's going to take the richer plan design because it doesn't cost them anything.
How many? I'd ask people out there. How many people out there have gone to dinner with a group and someone said, I'll pick up the tab. I'm going to pay the tab tonight. Watch what people order. You will inevitably have a pretty decent percentage of the people at that table will order the most expensive thing on the menu. And if you've eaten with those people before when they were paying the bill, you know they don't order that normally.
That's when I ever buy the tab. I do it at the end of dinner. Hey, I'll pick up the tab that you ordered. But I think part of that is, and I always give the analogy, with the internet. If you want to buy a 60-inch flat screen TV, I mean, you could type that in and Google it and find within, probably half a millisecond, within 50 miles of Cleveland, who's got the best prices. Now it's a little bit different when you're talking about a TV because it's, basically.
Can you buy that over state lines?
Sure,
you
can.
Buy a TV from outside the state.
Sure, you can. I'm not sure how that affects healthcare, but
because if we could buy insurance across state lines, they'd have to compete.
Yeah, but the argument there, it may work. I don't understand it because what happens is if Blue Cross of Tennessee wants to sell in Idaho, if they choose, that's great. But the problem is they've got to have a relationship with the providers in Idaho to get the discounts. So if Blue Cross of Tennessee has zero volume in Idaho, they're not going to get a discount from the providers.
Well, but do you trust Blue Cross Blue Shield to make that decision?
Well, I trust them to negotiate a provider discount.
Then let's give them the permission to do it.
But there's the biggest hurdle I see across state lines is you got to have, if you don't have discounts, because if the cost of care all suddenly drops and there is no more discounts.
I could see it working, for example, in a place like Dalton, Georgia, and Chattanooga, where there's a close proximity. And Blue Cross could actually make the argument that we have a substantial number of people who, for example, work for our companies here who are Georgia residents.
But why are we restricting their ability to give it a try?
No, I see no reason
with
trying it. I just don't understand how I think that's going to solve it might, but I don't understand that.
It would be just a free market. In other words, if Blue Cross wanted to move into Pennsylvania, they'd start selling.
Yeah, but Blue Cross is probably a bad example because they're independent. They're part of the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. They're independent in all 50 states. They all operate under the Blue Cross Association. So
they actually operate very differently. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Ohio is much better coverage than Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee.
Well, then it goes back to state mandates, like in Illinois. They mandate gastric bypass, private duty nursing, and other things. So if you're writing group plans in the state of Illinois, they all are mandated by the state of Illinois to cover those things. Tennessee,
and therefore they cost more.
Well, of course, you get more.
And the government sticks their nose in.
So the state of Tennessee doesn't have those mandates. So the Blue Cross of Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, and Virginia are all owned by Anthem, Blue Cross and Blue Shield. But
that's a big swatch for one place to own.
Yeah. So, but it's in today's world, it's all about the discounts now because maybe prices are inflated.
And that's one of the things. While in theory saying I'd like to know what the prices are at hospitals, but the facts are there are no one prices at a hospital.
No, they're different prices.
There's a price for the Blue Cross Blue Shield
Cigna,
Network S people, and there's the
correct.
Cigna one, and then there's the
But Andy, what has LASIK surgery done price-wise over the years?
But it stabilized or went down. Demand's probably
it was thousands of dollars. Now it's less than $300. What insurance companies cover LASIK?
None.
So it's completely cash business, and the price has gone down in the hundreds of percentage points.
Well, yeah, I'd say demand
but that means it's a purely competitive marketplace, and that drove the price down.
No, and I buy other arguments. Same thing with plastic surgery. Plastic surgery costs have pretty much stabilized.
Plummeted. Well, they've gone down.
But demand is still up.
Because demand goes up when price goes down.
So, back to Franklin, prices do differ. So if you have, Blue Cross Network S, and you get you're going to have an MRI of your right leg. Well, Tennova may get one price. The freestanding outpatient clinic may get one price. Erlanger may get one price. Memorial get one price.
The point is the hospital. Let's use ours for example. they couldn't really give us a menu that says, here's the price.
Why?
Because they have negotiated different prices with different parties already.
Here's another part of this problem. If you didn't have a government being intrusive and having to get certificates of need, then matter of fact, our local radiologists tried to do this. They would have installed an MRI. They would have sold it cheaper on a cash price.
So you can talk about that. Most people don't know what you're talking about.
Than the hospital, but that's the government trying to help people who is actually hurting people.
I mean, what John's talking about is, in order, they can't go out and buy just an MRI machine because you got to have there's got to be a need.
In dentistry, if I want a new, fancy new equipment that makes my practice better, I can go buy that, and I can sell it to my patients. Can't do that in medicine because the government stuck their nose in.
All right, hold on to everything. We've got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash. The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Hey folks, Glenn here from US Money Shops, and I've got another great gun offer for you in the month of February. If you're looking for a great gun for personal protection, US Money Shops has a package for you. We're offering the Taurus PT709 Slim 9mm with 2 free boxes of ammo and a free case for just $249.99. That's right, the gun, 2 boxes of ammo and a case for just $249.99. Now that's a deal. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Buy yourself or buy today, the better way at US Money Shops.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it.
Hello, my name is Andy Figelstaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
See this badge? Of course not. It's radio. It says Trained Comfort Specialist. It means we're expert technicians and as reliable as the trained systems we install, keeping your winters cozy and summers cool. And when you do see this badge, you'll immediately feel more comfortable.
Ready to indulge in trained comfort? Call a trained comfort specialist at Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. High-quality service and installation for more than 30 years.
It's hard to stop a trained comfort specialist.
Money Mark here. Excited about your tax refund? Looking to buy your next pre-owned vehicle? Bring your estimated tax refund to Buy Here, Pay Here USA, and we may defer your down payment. Our tax refund special makes it easy for you to sign and drive. Visit Buy Here, Pay Here USA in Cleveland, Dayton, Chattanooga, and our new Dalton location. Visit buyherepayhereusa.com/tax for more information. We are Buy Here, Pay Here USA.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239 or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961 7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back live in the studio, and everything's nice and calm right now. We're talking about no Obamacare. Andy?
Center of the tornado.
Yeah, we're in the center of the storm.
Center of
right
the
now.
tornado.
You were saying something while I was on break about these tax credits.
You know, the way I was talking about the current system, you know, the way it works, it's a sliding scale. You get a advanced premium tax credit, tax subsidy, whatever you want to call it. It's actually called premium assistance in the law. 100% to 400% of federal poverty level. It's a sliding scale based on where you stand under federal poverty level. But what I was talking about from a cost standpoint, we had a couple of clients that came in that they're both in their late 50s, early 60s. I think their gross income was somewhere in the $35,000 range. But they're getting around $23,000 a year in tax credit to buy insurance, which is great for them. So their premium is zero. They don't have a Cadillac plan by any means. They've got to pay the first $1,000 or $2,000 out of pocket. But my question is, that's one family getting $23,000 times 8 million across the country. I mean, that's a lot of money from a cost standpoint. It's good for them, and I'm glad for them.
But somebody has to pay that. It's not free.
But somebody's got to pay it, So
and we're already $20 trillion in debt.
So what does it tell us, though?
That we can't afford it.
Well,
tells us we can't afford
that's
it.
not the question I was going to ask.
Of course not. You're a liberal Democrat.
Now be nice, John.
No.
But
what does it tell us, though, when we talk about the fact that there are substantial numbers of people in our society who are in fact working? So let's get the idea out that it's people who don't want to work, all right, who couldn't possibly afford health insurance without some assistance.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
they wouldn't be able to afford that. They wouldn't have health insurance. I mean, where they work, the employer doesn't provide benefits.
If those people had a catastrophic illness without that insurance, where would that cost get absorbed?
Well, the hospital's going to end up eating it, or Medicaid may pick it up, but
And who pays for that, though?
the taxpayers.
Okay.
Well, I know years ago the hospital here used to just write off their losses, and the county and city would help.
Well, the county
subsidize
owned the
it.
hospital at that time.
That's right. They'd help subsidize it.
Look here, one of the problems
But I mean, the problem with that analogy is, though, when you say they just write it off, what that really means is they've passed the cost off to the rest of their patients who had to cover that
frankly,
cost.
any business, I have people that don't pay me, and it becomes part of my overhead, and it gets passed off. That's normal business. But by the way, 81% of the people that this CBO is talking about got coverage through Medicaid. Medicaid results are actually worse than no insurance at all. Franklin, were you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Well, according to studies, patients on Medicare were 45% more likely to die than those with private insurance. Hang on, let me finish. Okay. The uninsured were 74% more likely to die, and Medicaid patients were 93% more likely to die. The outcomes for people on Medicaid is actually worse than the people who have no insurance.
Well, I suspect that when you look at the demographics involved, that overwhelmingly those Medicaid folks are going to be very poor individuals who frequently, statistically at least,
are they poorer than the uninsured? Are they poorer than the uninsured?
Many times, yes. Because, as you've pointed out, until the last couple of years, that's been a choice people make.
I would probably argue they are because the uninsured can't qualify for Medicaid because they're making too much money according to the government to qualify for Medicaid.
All the studies have indicated people on Medicaid actually have worse results than people without it. And over 80% of the people who got this expanded got Medicaid.
We've argued about this and we've talked about this, but let's talk positive. What can we do to improve health care in the United States? Andy, I'm going to ask you first. What do you think needs to happen to improve health care?
Well,
what's your opinion? And let's just share everybody's opinion. And you've all got about 1 minute to do this, and let's try to have a civil conversation.
Well, it's personal accountability. I mean, we as Americans have to pay attention to our health, and we know we can't be eating, 5 Big Macs every night for dinner and not expect to end up obese with diabetes and high blood pressure. I mean, it starts with us as consumers. We have to be more responsible and take ownership. If that doesn't happen, I don't care what you do with healthcare. If the demand keeps on rising, cost is going to go up on that.
So if you're fat and overweight and you don't eat right, your insurance should be more.
Well, I mean,
or you should have cost out of pocket.
You're going to spend more, no doubt about it, because if you're 100 pounds overweight, that's going to lead to hypertension, when it's going to lead to being diabetic, and all kinds of issues. And if add smoking on top of it, you end up with COPD. Those are the issues that we're talking about. And realize 60 to 70% of all claims are lifestyle driven. So if we don't have a healthier lifestyle, I don't care what we're talking about. The cost issue is not going to get under control. You can talk all you want to, but if we're not going to live healthier lifestyles and demand less health care, I don't see an end to this.
Okay. Franklin, yours.
Well, I would suggest that the emphasis on health care coverage needs to be reallocated more toward driving people into primary care as opposed to hospital-oriented care. So I think you could probably make a radically different argument that what you do is get rid of all deductibles and so forth for primary care, going to your family doctor, getting evaluated, getting regular physicals, those sorts of things, so that you have somebody there who's probably coaching and pushing people towards some of those better lifestyle choices and helping to identify these problems before they reach the catastrophic level. Now, would the hospitals necessarily like that approach? Probably not. But I think that addressing what Andy's saying, that would probably be a more fruitful thing. I'll give the Republicans a little bit of credit. They do frequently talk about this idea, though they haven't done much about it, of allowing us to negotiate internationally for drug prices and so forth. That is, in fact, something other countries do, and they seem to pay a lot less than us. I don't know why that would be, but one mistake that was made in Obamacare is that on the front end, in order to get pharma's buy-in into Obamacare, if you remember, the pharmaceutical industry backed it completely.
And the insurance industry.
Was because they exempted that portion of it. And so they maintained that fact that we don't negotiate for prescription drugs across federal lines, so to speak. And that probably is as Andy's pointed out, a significant cost driver, particularly for older.
So you're happy that Trump's working on that now?
No, there's nothing in fact, this new bill that deals with that.
So you're for competing.
John, it's your turn.
I'm just amazed that you're for competing across international lines, but not across state
I'm not
lines.
opposed to competing across state lines. I just don't think it's a magic bullet.
John, 1 minute. What do you
first
think?
First off, what I would do is get the government out of the way. One of the reasons the drugs are so expensive here is because of the FDA. A lot of the drugs that are sold in these other countries don't have to jump through as many hoops as the FDA forces the drug companies in our country to do. Another thing that Franklin doesn't mention is some of these countries actually legally don't allow above a certain price, and those drug companies are actually losing money in those countries, and other countries end up having to subsidize that. So that's an international trade problem right there. But the biggest problem is you have to have people have skin in the game. Nobody is going to lower their health risk if it doesn't cost them anything. You know, Franklin mentions that we get rid of all copays. Well, one of your problems is for Medicaid right now, as of 2015, only 67% of the doctors take Medicaid, and only 45% take new patients on Medicaid. So they don't want these people because the government doesn't reimburse them enough. And by the way, the studies all indicate that Medicaid actually doesn't cause enrollees to substitute office visits for emergency room visits. It actually caused them to use both of them more often. So having Medicaid not costing you anything actually makes you go to the doctor more, go to the emergency room more, not less. The problem is big government sticks its nose in. if I was going to do it, first off, I would do tort reform, which we've wanted to do for decades
Already
now,
done it in
and the
Tennessee.
Democrats won't allow us to do
It's
it.
already been done in Tennessee.
We do it federally. I would do that. I would allow a cross-state line competition. I would go in and get rid of these certificates of need and allow. We had a local group of radiologists that wanted to install more MRIs in Bradley County, which would have necessarily caused competition, caused the price to go down. They couldn't get a certificate of need. Now, you know what that was?
Who issues
Politics.
that? Who issues the certificate? The state at that level?
Right. But it's government. The problem is government meddles causes more trouble.
But if they want to spend, $2 million on an MRI machine, their practice.
If a bank's willing to loan them the money to put the machine in and they're willing to put the effort in to sell it, let them.
Let me ask you a question, and that's the end of your time, but I want to ask you a question to follow up to that. There for a while, some of the doctors were going around putting some of these clinics in and doing some things themselves, and
We've already done that.
and it was a conflict of interest. In other words, if they had an MRI machine and they were sending their patients there, they were just feeding their bottom line.
So what?
Rather than
when did we get against people making money?
Okay, I'm asking you a question. So the doctors
what we were against.
So the doctors need
what
to be
we
competing.
were against is something like Medicare, for example, paying for unnecessary
a surgery
MRIs, where an individual was simply referring people to their own MRI machine to get them done, so they could get.
Let me ask you a question, Franklin.
And they were sending
If
a whole
someone
lot more
comes
MRIs.
into, do you think there's ever a lawyer where someone comes in and the lawyer listens to the case and knows absolutely without a doubt that it's a losing case, but goes, sure, $2,500 retainer, I'll take your case, we'll file the paperwork? Does that happen?
All right.
Sure, sometimes.
That's business. And guess what? When a guy does something blatantly enough, word gets out and people go, that guy's screwing you over, don't go to him. That's how business
then
works.
they would have to have some type of criteria before the MRI.
Let me come up with something here. I was at the doctor's office here a few weeks ago, and I happened to find a magazine that was geared to the doctor directly. And I was reading some articles about in there, and it was very interesting to me. And a new concept now is where a doctor would charge you
concierge service.
A concierge service. In other words, they charge you so much per year, and they take care of it. Or they charge you and your family so much a year. That's not a bad program, is it?
No, I mean, it's going on in Atlanta. I mean, bigger cities have
well,
it.
Nashville has two doctors doing it now.
All right, and tell me how is the government involved in that?
They're not. I don't
How
think.
is insurance companies involved in
They're
that?
not, are they?
So in other words,
Sure
the
they are.
marketplace
Sure.
is innovating and lowering the cost for people.
Well, is that not a good way for us to start
Get
leaning?
the government out of the way.
Well, what I'm trying to say, John, is this Obamacare thing. If we set this up where this would be a way that doctors would provide services in the future, you've got to have competition. You've got to have competition to get these prices down. I mean, my problem with healthcare right now is it's absolutely crazy. You go into one hospital and the MRI is $3,000 or $4,000. You go somewhere else and it's $1,200.
No doubt.
I mean, it's just crazy that you've got prices like that. So I like the idea of this.
But there's no market pressure on those two hospitals because somebody else pays the bill. That's why that exists.
There's no market.
There's no market. When you say 1,200 and 3,000, most of the people that get MRIs at both of those hospitals have no idea how much it costs
Because they're not
paying it. There's no market pressure.
That's right.
Well,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Is though.
I mean,
But
there is
I
no
like-
free lunch. I was going back to John, talking about everybody's got to have some skin in the game. I wished that the federal government, instead of doing Obamacare, they just worked like a big reinsurer, and they said, okay, Mr. Insurance Company, you're going to be responsible for the first $1 million in claims per member. Right now, it's unlimited, so the healthcare law says, Mr. Insurance Company, you have an unlimited maximum that you can spend per employee. Well, from a business standpoint, it's kind of hard to plan on what unlimited
They hate
is.
uncertainty.
But if they knew, hey, I'm responsible for $1 million or $750 or $2 million, or whatever that figure is, the federal government would work as a reinsurer. Is my time over?
No, accidentally hit the bell. Well, you're the only one that stops right here when you hear that.
But then what happens is the insurance companies could predict their cost. They would know from certainty, hey, if I have 100,000 members at $1 million responsibility, boom, who cares about the mandates? You know, from a plan design standpoint, essential health benefits, if I want a $10,000 deductible, I can get it. But people, based on their income, there would be no 100% coverage. You'd have to pay X amount of dollars based on your income. So if you're making $15,000, you got to pay $200 a year and help the first $200 or the first $300 or the first $400. So they have some skin in the game, and then write whatever policy you want to write. And then and I'm a big tax person, but to fund that the insurance over the $1 million, we would pay an additional tax to fund the reinsurance. But that would be pretty
Basically,
simple.
The federal government would have the catastrophic care plan,
right? And then everything else would be in between. But
is that essentially a hidden public option? Is that what that is?
Well,
no, it's just for catastrophic
it's just
care.
for catastrophic. It's just like large companies are doing it. It's the same thing that a group of 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 employees. They're self-funded. They're going out. They're buying reinsurance up to a certain level.
But would that not require to make it actually functional a mandate?
Well, I don't know if you necessarily have to have an individual mandate or not, because you strip out a lot of what we have in Obamacare. You could do the issue is no pre-existing conditions is a huge issue.
Andy, do you sell car insurance?
I do not sell car insurance.
All right, but you're aware of it.
Yeah, I have it.
How long would the car insurance company stay in business if you could buy insurance after you had a wreck?
Well, you can't. That's what I try to tell people. That's what
That's what the pre-existing
does. Car insurance after
so that's actually one of the and that's a lasting probably monument from Obama. That is fundamentally. Now, look, I understand, and the political reality is you've given this to people, and that's what the Republicans are wrangling with. This has been given, and it's hard to take something away. But that is fundamentally in opposition to the very concept of insurance as we know it.
That's correct.
Well, but you could also have pre-existing conditions as a 10-year-old. That follows you your whole life.
Yeah, before the law was you couldn't go uninsured more than 63
frankly,
days.
Somebody who wants to play basketball was born too short.
You probably didn't get to decide if you were going to have insurance.
You don't
or not
decide how tall you are. You don't decide whether you got blonde hair or black hair. It is what it is.
But that's a huge. I mean, but the way the system works today is it's adverse selection at its finest. So I don't buy insurance today. I come down or I need a heart transplant. Well, January 1, I can get insurance, and the insurance company's going to pay for that heart transplant. And then I get the heart transplant, and then I drop it. And then next January I sign up for it. That's the problem.
It's effectively unworkable.
I mean, I don't know how you solve that issue. I mean, unless the individual mandate, the tax is equal to the premium. So what we find, a lot of people say, okay, health insurance is going to cost me $1,200 a year. The tax is only $300. I'm just going to pay the $300.
In fairness, if you accept the concept of the individual mandate, the tax wasn't large enough to make it sustainable.
Right.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Lesser of two evils.
But the problem with all of this, what happens in the marketplace, for example, a gay couple. Would a gay couple normally buy maternity coverage?
No.
Why were they forced to buy maternity coverage?
I guess if they're...
Well...
I guess if it's two women, they might, but two men wouldn't.
So the problem with this is the government stepped in and started forcing people to do what the government wanted them to do. And every time we've done that, we've gotten a worse system rather than a better.
I'm agree with you. I think less government would be better.
Let's talk about what the Republicans are trying to do right now. Now, I just want to kind of ease into this a little bit so we can have a little bit of a conversation.
2 minutes.
Well, we might take 3. What do you think is going to happen with what Trump is trying to do with health care right now?
Unless the bill changes radically, it's not going to go anywhere.
Which is fine.
Okay.
I mean, the problem is you got, obviously, Democrats against it. You got conservative Republicans against it. You got some the problem is you're going to have all the Republicans, and he doesn't have all the Republicans.
If we don't do anything, it's
probably going to collapse by the end of the year.
Oh, yeah. See, the problem is you've got insurance companies that are, okay, for example, they just updated the law that says that now if you had a grandmothered plan, which did not meet the requirements of the essential health benefits, you can keep it through the end of 2018. Well, the problem is what they don't tell you is the carriers get to make that decision. So Blue Cross, Blue Shield, for example, has already, they've got to develop, they've got to price, they've got to get actuarially predict where their expenses are going to be based on what the law is. So they've done that over the last 5 years, and now the government says, hey, you can go back to what you had until 2018.
But isn't that also because the government lied initially and told you could?
It probably is, but the problem is Blue Cross is not going back because they got, hey, we've priced our plans based on these laws, and now you want to change them or say we can't. Well, no, we're going forward. And the problem is the uncertainty from the insurance standpoint is what are the rules of the game so we can set our prices accordingly. So whatever we do.
So if we kept Obamacare the way it is, would it be better or worse?
No, I think you're going to see individual carriers drop out, and there's not going to be a market for individual.
So it's dying.
So
it's dying.
But see, here's the thing, okay? And this is what we've been saying. Nobody's saying Obamacare is perfect or doesn't need to be changed.
It's collapsing.
The problem, it's collapsing in part because of the Medicaid expansion not being complete. That's part of it.
Things.
But the point is, you guys are obsessed with this idea of repeal while you try to figure out what to do about it. Why don't you just figure out some changes you can make to the law to make it more sustainable?
It's unfixable in its current form.
The plan that he's offered is 90% Obamacare.
Well,
so why can't it be fixed?
First off, the plan he's offered is part one of 3 different steps. Yeah. Now, there is a political problem here. The third step, which is the most important part, which would get to a cross-state line. And by the way, on this competition, let me point out something that got missed in this. Let's say that you've got a small business owner and he's got 5 employees. He can't afford his health insurance. But if he could bond together through a national organization that would put all the 5 employee small businesses together, then he could buy.
So why
That's
not
what across
just
state
pass
lines
a
would
bill
do. Because
that
the
creates
Democrat
these
obstructionists in the Senate we have to hit the 60 vote threshold.
You don't to do some of those things, John.
Aren't they already doing that?
Well, we get Democratic support.
Aren't we already doing that?
You have some association plans, what I would call that.
Right. Why wouldn't any business form their own association right now?
I mean, you could. I mean, obviously, then, there are association plans out there, but then there's IRS guidelines. That's considered a multiple employer welfare agreement. There's additional forms and everything.
Complicated.
It becomes.
In other words, take the fat out.
In other words, get the government out.
The fat's the government.
But by the way, let me point out something. One of the problems with this is you could do all of this in one bill, if not for the grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Robert Byrd, rule in the Senate. This 51 vote thing that we're operating under is simply a Senate rule. It's not a constitutional limit. It's not a federal law. It's a rule that Robert Byrd, former wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, put in place. And what it says is you can only vote on budgetary matters. And everything else is subject to cloture, which requires a 60 vote. The Senate could actually change that rule, could address all 3 of these things in one whack.
You could get Democrats to support several of these modifications.
Why didn't they do it when they were in charge?
Well, you're in charge now.
We've been
Don't
talking
tell me
about
what they didn't do.
Franklin,
because the Republicans opposed everything.
You're saying we could get Democrats to vote for it. We've been talking about it since the very start of this. Yes, we've been talking about cross-state lines since the beginning.
You've never, because for 6 years, all you've talked about is we have to repeal it.
Because it was a disaster.
You haven't tried anything to fix the problem.
This is going to work out fine politically because it's going to collapse.
Let's talk about that. Hospital care versus physician health care.
What now?
I mean, you in your segment you said health care, primary care versus hospital care. All right. So there's 2 things.
So it's preventative care versus dealing with it after the problem.
Drug price negotiation.
Sure.
Well, I know Trump was already doing drug price negotiation when he came into office.
That's not part of this bill that he's offering.
Well, it's part of the third step.
Why not do it now?
Because the rule that the Ku Klux Klan wizard put in place won't let them.
Free drinks tomorrow. Oh, it's tomorrow.
Anyway, I want to say something about a 3-phase plan. There is no 3-phase plan that will ever last in politics.
The problem is Senator Tom Cotton said the third phase, which is the most important part about making it work, won't pass because of Senate obstructionists by the Democrats.
I think the
Republicans are opposed to it.
I think there's a lockbox somewhere.
All right, I want to say this. Young doctors these days are coming out of school, and they're getting hooked into hospitals. They're not trying to get into their own.
It's corporate medicine. You've pushed
but hold on, but let's be clear about this. Up until about 10 years ago, that was illegal in Tennessee. But the hospital said, well, that's not fair. Competition, we ought to be able to hire anybody we want to. It used to be that the rule was the physician couldn't be employed by the hospital because you didn't want the hospital controlling the physician's medical decisions. That's no longer the law.
Yeah, but the reason the impact is pushing in that direction is because the rules and regulations from the government have gotten so massive, individual doctors can't afford to fill out all the paperwork.
They can't do the computer
That's the
system.
reason these guys go to the corporate structure.
They can't take the liability.
Oh, no, they convinced everybody that these in-house doctors, they call them hospitalists, would be better at managing
They
costs.
may have convinced them, but the reason the doctor was willing to work for a salary in a corporation was because he didn't want to or wasn't able to deal with all the paperwork.
If a doctor went in on his own now, and if his computer system was hacked and some of this information, they'd be liable to a lawsuit. Am I right?
Oh, you're liable for everything.
I mean,
you got the requirements, the EMR, electronic medical records, all that expense, and I mean
that's why they're not
advantages.
doing it. That's why I love this concierge services. I think this is the way to go.
But keep in mind, why do you think that's so great? Because the government's not involved and the insurance companies are not involved.
That's right.
That's going to be a moving
That's a
market.
free market.
And you have a savings account plan, and you go
but how
buy
many
your
people-
own.
It's a free market.
Okay.
I love the healthcare savings plan.
No doubt.
Is that where we're going in the future?
Well, I mean, that's where we need to be.
Here's what'll
but
happen. Andy
we have
can-
negative saving rates.
Well, Andy can speak to
The
this.
country.
If you have, you will know what your
And you
healthcare
will
savings
when
account
they
is.
do
You'll know what these tax write-offs are. The insurance companies will design a plan that costs exactly what you're able to write off. You will have no money out of pocket. It's a win-win all the way around. Now, CBO, one of the things they did is they said those won't work. Why would anybody leave that money on the table? Why would an insurance company not go after that money? It will work.
Have we just decided what should happen?
No, but I think the health savings accounts are great. I mean, I have one. I
have one too, and I love it. I
you know,
mean, there's no surprises that way.
But that people need to take advantage of that, and it's amazing that people that don't. But the issue comes in is, when you're living paycheck to paycheck and you don't have any discretionary income to save, that becomes the issue.
Yeah, but
the same reason they're not funding their IRA.
Yeah, but the problem with that argument too, though, Andy, is when you're living paycheck to paycheck, and we make this whole discussion about coverage, but you've got a $4,000 deductible, you don't have $4,000. So, you can have all the coverage in the world, you don't have any care.
Right.
I wish we could stay here longer, but we've got to go. We're running late.
I gotta go make a living.
Andy, we're going to invite you back.
I will say, when Andy's here, we have a much better discussion.
Boy, Andy, you sure calm things down right now.
I live by one motto. I only open my mouth if I know what I'm talking about. So I only
Well,
talk.
that's not the motto that we live by here, I promise you.
That's why I was silent the first half.
Oh, hey, enjoyed it again this week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them